At bizval, we are passionate about empowering entrepreneurs the world over. In the bizval podcast, we showcase stories of real entrepreneurs and advisors, sharing lessons and inspiration from their journeys to make your journey just that little bit easier. Today, we are privileged to be joined by two incredible guests on the show, the co-founders of Worttth.com, and that's Worttth with three T's, Matt Budden and Matt Smith. It's a bit of a play on words, the Matt and Matt, hence the M&M podcast. So welcome to both of you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Graham. It's good to be here. We're excited to connect today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Graham.
Fantastic. So before we get into the business conversation, I've got a couple of playful questions for the two of you. And it's designed to let our audience get a bit of a peek behind the curtains of the real you. So to Matt B, or maybe we'll just call you Buddy for the duration of the show, let's start with the M&M pun. So the candy coated sweets. For those of you in South Africa, M&Ms are known as Smarties. So Matt or Buddy, which of you is actually the smarter one?
It's a good question. I'd say if we're speaking about sweets, firstly, I definitely have the sweet tooth. And if you saw the rest of our bodies, you would know that I'm the one that enjoys my sweets a little bit more than Matt. But in terms of smart, I would definitely say that's Matt Smith. I was told from a very young age that I need to surround myself with people that are smarter than me in the room. And so that's why wherever I go, I always ask Matt to join me because, he's definitely the smarter Matt.
We'll give him a right of reply now. So Smithy or Matt S. So let's deal with the other M&M. I see you've got a cap on, but it's facing the wrong way apparently. But a serious question now, which one of you is the real Slim Shady?
It's funny you ask this, but Matt is actually super musical, and so he's definitely the real Slim Shady. Matt gave up a career in music to follow down a path of accounting. So I don't know if that makes him a real Slim Shady or not, but he's definitely the musical of the two of us.
Well, it's good at least to see. I mean, you guys have been in business together for a few years, and that you can still have that banter and camaraderie. I think that's fantastic. But building a business is hard, and I guess having a co-founder or someone in your corner who you can share those important moments in life and have a bit of banter, the good times and the bad times, because it's not always easy. So I think let's get started. I mean, today is talking about you, it's talking about Worttth. Maybe if you could each start a little bit with your personal journey. What led to you pursuing a career in accounting? What made you hang up the guitar, Buddy, and move into the world of numbers and spreadsheets?
I grew up in Cape Town, and I went to an all-boys school called Rondebosch. Boys, I went to the prep school and the high school. And I actually started my journey post-school days in marketing. There is definitely a creative flair that I really enjoy. I suppose, given the traditional sort of background of schooling that I went through, and someone who was very ambitious in terms of wanting to perform and achieve, I saw a lot of my friends move towards some of the more professional degrees. So in that first year of studies, some of my friends were obviously focusing on the sort of chartered accountant route, and something in me just was like, I want to be a part of that group of achievers or ambitious people. And so I actually did the switch at the end of my first year. I studied a business science in finance and accounts at UCT. And, the numbers and the granular elements of accounting really don't excite me at all. But what really did pique my interest in this business is the lens of a financial flavor and the ability to sit in the rooms with business leaders. I think that is something that has really always excited me, is being able to have conversations and connections with people in leadership and help businesses build or business owners build impactful businesses. And so that sort of led us to sort of where we are today. I definitely took the non-traditional route in terms of my qualification in chartered accountancy. I didn't go in audit. I wangled my way into corporate finance division and spent a lot of time in valuations and financial due diligence. And so that has always been a part of, hopefully getting a little bit of my creative flair away from just the numbers. I did go through a crossroads in my life where I had this opportunity. We were playing in a band with a group of friends, and we were doing quite well in South Africa. We had this opportunity to move to Europe. At the same time, I'd fallen in love with my now wife, and so I was making all these big decisions of, do I follow this conservative route of accounting, or do I take this rock star lifestyle sort of forward? And you can understand the decision I made. Here I am, and I'm very grateful for that decision. So yeah, that kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of who I am. Really enjoy the people element of business, and using the numbers to tell a story and then help people think creatively and strategically around that.
That's such a fantastic backstory, and I didn't know that coming into the show. I mean, you genuinely are a creative accountant, so so I think
we
that
don't
answers
say
the
that too
question.
much.
You are the real Slim Shady. So Matt, I mean, why don't you share a bit about your story? So what led you to pursuing a career in accounting?
Yeah, sure. I had a
Did you give up
very
as a professional
similar.
golfer? I mean, was that the original?
I wish. I don't know if I would have given that up, but I probably had a similar sort of upbringing to Matt. Also, was at an all-boys school. Really enjoyed my maths and accounting at school. And I mean, it sounds a bit boring, but the stability of the profession was a big draw card for me. I think I didn't want to go through life kind of worrying about the stability or steadfastness of a particular profession. And so that was definitely something that drew me in, at least to the point when I got to university. That's what I was going to study. And then I think during my time at university, I started to develop a real passion for teaching, and finished off the year after my honors year. In fact, Matt did the same. We both stayed on at our respective universities and taught for a year. So we both lectured for a year before we sort of embarked on our article journey. And I think that was quite a big turning point in that it kind of fanned a bit of a flame for teaching and leading people. And I think there's definitely an itch that still needs to be scratched in the education space for me. But ultimately that led to, continuing the chartered accountancy path. And a big part of our business now is more consulting. And so there's still a big teaching element. And so, that's kind of been my journey up until this point. Is there's an accounting element, but definitely love the teaching side of the profession.
Fantastic. So, I mean, we know a little bit about you guys, and we're not going to probe too deep into those into your personal lives, but I think one of the things we want to talk a little bit about is kind of the birth of Worttth. Sure, I'm really doing well with the puns today, but but
You may be the real Slim Shady.
So let's tell our listeners a little bit about the idea of Worttth. How did it come about, and what do you guys actually do? So it might not be obvious, but maybe just talk a bit about also the gap in the market, how you identified that, and what kind of led you guys to starting this venture. So I don't know which of the Matts wants to start, but yeah, let's talk a bit about that story.
Sure, I can go for this. So Worttth Advisory is a boutique financial consulting firm, and what we're doing is trying to walk a journey alongside founders or entrepreneurs, providing them with clarity of their numbers, and ultimately paving a way forward for growth, sustainable growth, impact. And we're trying to take a very strong holistic view of what finance looks like, for predominantly the founder, but obviously for their teams as well. And so the hope for us is we do all the compliance elements of bookkeeping, analysis, building of reporting, but where we find our greatest value is actually walking the journey strategically with them and helping them think about growth and building our teams and how to acquire new clients. And ultimately, the longer plays, what do you want this business to do from an impact perspective, as well as what is the desired outcome at the end of the day. And because of our lens of corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, we always looking or analyzing the businesses from a view of a potential investor's lens. And I think that gives us a nice way of just, helping people think not about the day-to-day granular, but how do you work on your business rather than just working in your business. So we would consider ourselves partners, a fractional part of your executive team, and really want to be a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs. How did it come about? We actually built some relationships in our prior roles at a different company, and a specific individual named Caitlin Carlson, who's a wealth advisor in clients' personal capacity, came to us and said, "Don't you want to walk a journey alongside me and build a business around this holistic approach where you take care of my clients' businesses? And obviously, if the businesses succeed, that means there's more money to invest in their personal lives and their personal investments." And so we've developed this awesome partnership. She was a big believer in who we were and the way that we did a business. And so we've just been so grateful for that relationship. So that was a very big catalyst for the way that we move towards it. Now, what sets us apart? We are trying to be one of our core values is creativity, maybe mainly coming from our side, and maybe it's good to just share some of those values. Creativity, excellence, where I think Matt just demonstrates that in everything that he does. We also have an element of teamwork, and we've really built our business around that. And then the last one is, and probably the most important in terms of filling the gap, is human connection. We're really trying to be relational in our approach. We think that there's a significant gap there in the financial space. And so the hope is that people feel trusted by us. They feel that we deeply care about them. And it's in the boutique nature of the way we do things and how we want to go deep that we feel has really stood us in good stead and made people feel comfortable. A lot of these clients we work with are incredible creatives, have great business, but lack the acumen and have a lot of stress around the concept of money. And so we can plug that gap for them as they think about their business as a whole.
I mean, yeah, Matt, there's so much in that, I mean, in a sense, I guess you were accidental entrepreneurs, so there was an opportunity that presented itself. I think also the importance of Kate in that journey, somebody who kind of had an opportunity for you, kind of de-risked it, I would imagine, a little bit, as a source of potential clients and what have you. And I think walking that journey, having an ecosystem of people in your corner who have similar beliefs, similar value system, and wanting to share in that journey. And I think, we experience it a lot with the businesses that we work with as well, is it's not, entrepreneurship is actually not competitive in nature. It's about collaboration rather than competition. And there's enough for everybody to go around, provided you have the right sort of mindset. Matt, I mean, or to Matt Smith, we're going to trip over all the Matts, but there's another pun. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about, your transition to the US market. So for some of our listeners here, I might be saying in South Africa, the UK, the US. I mean, Worttth is primarily a US business. Matt B, you sitting over in Maryland. Matt Smith, you in Cape Town at the moment. Most of your clients are in the US. So, other than meeting Kate and say, "Hey, I've got some clients that need help," tell us a little bit about why you decided to start Worttth in the US, why that's your focus market. And maybe what have been some of the challenges, I guess, in terms of entering the US market? For our listeners, very briefly, Matt Smith, you based here in Cape Town. So maybe I'm going to hand over to you, given that Matt B gave the last answer. Share a little bit about that transition and what it's meant for you, both personally and as a business.
For sure. I think, I mean, a big part of starting in the US was that Matt and I had both been already working in the US. So we had I think at the time Matt had been at the previous company for about 2 years, and I was probably there for a year and a half. So we're already building relationships, getting an understanding of what the market looks like in the US. And there's just so many opportunities and really interesting businesses that just simply don't exist here in South Africa, or in, really anywhere in the world. And so there's definitely, without a doubt, a gap in that there's just so much opportunity in the US. And then obviously journeying with Caitlin has been a big part of like really focusing our attention, and to go even more granular, we predominantly work with female entrepreneurs. I would say 95% of our client base are female entrepreneurs, and yeah, it's been a really exciting journey getting an understanding of the US market. It hasn't always been easy. There are challenges. I think me being and some of our team sit here in South Africa, and so time zones are a bit of a challenge. There's also a cultural difference. So a lot of the stuff that, basic things like a lot of the stuff that we find funny isn't necessarily funny in the US. But at the same time, I think we bring so much value in that we have a really solid education system here in South Africa. And so I think the value we bring from an excellence or profession perspective really sets us apart from a lot of other accounting practices that are based in the US. But I would say probably, our biggest challenge is just managing service delivery, with a big part of our team being based here in South Africa.
And Matt, being you based over in the US, so you've been there for a while. How important has that been actually, I guess having boots on the ground in the US? Yes, you've got a core relationship with Kate, but you being there, has that been instrumental in your success?
I would say it definitely has a significant impact. The ability for people to know that we're on one of the biggest continents, but are relatively close, is a big deal. It is interesting how quickly that builds a sense of trust in our globalized market these days as well. It's like knowing that someone is based in the US is important for our American clients. So yeah, it's also given us the opportunity to, we are fully digital, but we've created these spaces, and that's something that brings me a lot of sort of passion and joy, is actually going to meet our clients. And so because I'm no longer sort of sitting next to Matt in person every day and the rest of the team in South Africa, it's been a great outlet for me too, to go and build relationships and sort of be tasked with that. It also just gives us a great sense of, we definitely are navigating challenges of service delivery, but it also gives us a competitive advantage where we have the sort of 24-hour service or communication line, which is really helpful.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you kind of have to be able to adapt, and say, having people in both camps. You're 24/7 business now, right? So
Exactly.
when you're sleeping, South Africa's awake, basically. I want to just touch on a little bit about some of those cultural nuances and differences between, and even market differences between, let's call it, the US and maybe South Africa, or some other smaller markets, perhaps in Europe. And you kind of alluded to the fact around sort of like focusing on a niche. South Africans by nature, there's a saying in South Africa, boer maak 'n plan, which basically means South Africans are very good generalists. They can often see the bigger picture, and touch on different industries. And we operate in quite a small market. So to survive, often you need to be able to do multiple things. The US is a market that loves niches. You zone in, and we were chatting before the podcast, you zone in on one particular niche. It's big enough, and you service that really well. Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit on that and what it's meant for your business? Obviously 95% female founders, but yeah, how do how's that impacted on how you service your clients?
I can speak to some cultural elements that are interesting from a team perspective for Worttth, as well as just thinking about the niche. it was really difficult for me to come over to the US. Well, after spending a couple of months here and just understanding the cultural nuances. At that stage, I was leading a team here in the US. And, you know, what I love about South Africa is there is this deep desire to be a part of something bigger than yourselves. And it may be for various reasons. You know, we have a high unemployment rate where people are desperate to be a part of something and make sure that just on the basic level of needs, those are met. But there's this deep desire to be part of a team and to have impact. Whereas when we move to the US, it's very interesting to see how individualistic it is as to how much one can want to get out of it. And so it's very, like, I found it so hard to get people invested in the team. And that's why I'm super grateful that a lot of our team are in South Africa and they do have a similar value system to what Matt and I have. And, you know, I think when we interact with clients, there is a yearning for that too from some of our clients. We do things a little bit differently. And so they're like, wow, this is quite interesting. I want to, and the way we speak and the verbiage we use, it's often about bigger impact. And, you know, the hope is that that sort of transpires through the way we do work. In terms of the niche, once again, the market is just so significant here. Like just in every time we speak to a client about market share, they're like, well, all I'm looking for is 1% of the 1% of, like, it's, you know, that's all they need to focus on. And if they can focus their attention, you've got a great business here. So the one thing I will say, which is a little bit different, is I'm probably more generalist in my approach. Matt has a great ability to be specialist. So we've got this beautiful balance as well as generalist. But because our niche is female founders, in a sense, we're still working in a number of different business models and industries. And so that keeps it quite interesting for us. And it gives great exposure for our team to various ways of thinking about things. But most of our clients would be very focused on a specific industry or niche. And so it's just so it's exciting for us because we're getting the breadth or the elements of change all the time, but we're also getting to see what is really working for niche specific businesses and how they market to them, how do they build their team, how do they sort of curate community around that. And so, yeah, it's been a fun time to learn from that.
It's super interesting, you know, just to touch on that, when you talk about niche, it doesn't need to be a specific sector or industry. I mean, you can slice that in so many different angles, you know, and I think that's something, you know, from a bizval perspective, as we kind of entering into states as well, is you don't have to focus on valuations of laundromats in Austin, Texas, for argument's sake. You know, that's, I guess, most people's traditional view of a niche. It can cut horizontally, it can cut vertically, it can cut across tiers, and I think that's really where the opportunity lies, right? Is taking that bigger picture view and almost identifying niches that other people haven't thought about and thinking about it in a different way. Matt S., I want to talk to you a little bit about, you know, your guys' journey, building the business. You touched on some of the challenges in that earlier, but for you, what have been some of the most significant challenges that you've encountered in the early stages of the business? I mean, you guys are what, you know, almost 3 years in now. And, you know, what have been some of the hard times in trying to, you know, get Worttth to the point that it is now, where I guess you are a successful, growing, you know, big plans for the future, I'm sure. But yeah, what have those big challenges been, and how have you guys dealt with those?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're not quite at 3 years. We're coming up to the 2-year mark, but it feels like 3 years. The first year felt like
does feel like 3. I mean, it feels like you've been around forever.
I mean, the one that does jump out was, you know, initially it was just Matt and I, and we were doing everything from start to finish. So capacity was a big piece. That was definitely a significant challenge early on. Luckily, we both have very understanding wives who gave us a lot of space and grace to go out and build something that we were excited about. But we've built our team, and in fact that team has taken this business so much further, and we've been intentional about the people that we've hired and added to our team. I think in many instances, they bring things that Matt and I can't bring to our clients. So we've been very intentional about surrounding ourselves with the right people and building a great team. And then another, significant challenges is probably just standing firm to our values. I think about integrity, and quite early on, Matt and I faced with two clients that sort of questioned our integrity, or business integrity specifically. And I think as a startup, it's quite, as an early startup, it's always difficult to let clients go because you're so dependent on every client in those early days. But a lot of the clients sometimes shoot from the hip, and so they make some tricky decisions. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a partnership where Matt and I we're not having to deal with this on our own. And so Matt and I were able to have robust conversations with each other and say, this is not what we stand for, and this is not what we want to build our business around. And so it gave us sort of the confidence to go and terminate those contracts. So I would say integrity was not to say that we were never going to not terminate those contracts, but I think that's in an early startup, that's always a tougher decision than once you've got 50 clients. To terminate a contract is fairly straightforward, but when you've only got 5,
it's the difference whether you eat at the end of the month or you don't.
Exactly. But I'm really glad that we've chosen that, stuck to that approach. We haven't swayed from our core values and purpose, despite the phase of business we found ourselves in.
Yeah. And Matt B, I mean, anything you want to add to that in terms of sort of like, major challenges that you've experienced? I mean, as I say, you've been the one who's been over in the US and you've had to adapt culturally, and you've got a young family and all of those sorts of things. So are there any other challenges unique to you? I think that our listeners might need to know about.
I mean, I suppose there is this element of balance, or when we say balance, we try and think about it as integration, because a lot of our work and life sort of mix between the two. And Matt's expecting a baby soon, and so it's been quite nice for me down the line to kind of have a line of sight of what's coming up the lift. I think it has been, we're passionate about what we do. We love it. We love having impact on people, and being able, one of my biggest struggles personally is always that my wife and daughter will always be there. And so I'm always like, oh, I need to put in the effort now so that later on we can sort of reap the rewards of our time. And it's really changing the mindset of, specifically in the financial industry, where it is long hours, often late nights. How do we change this experience, and how do we keep ourselves accountable to that too? Matt and I are not very good at that in terms of setting boundaries. And so we're trying to learn. We started this business with the intention of creating space for things that are important to us. And have we got that right always? Definitely not. We're still navigating and learning. In terms of culture and business, I think it's an interesting one. When we have some really great male clients that we've journeyed with for a long time, but the female space is different, and they're different ways of working. And so how do you bring the best of both sides of this? I'm always thinking, I think one of the gifts that Matt and I have is we do have a nature of pursuing people, which is really great. And then there's this achievement element of the more masculine, and holding people accountable to efficiencies. And so it's just been an awesome journey to try and understand, how do we connect with different people? It's not only connecting with different, different genders, but also with a different culture, and like what makes them tick. One of the examples that we always think about is gifting, or we believe in creating magical human moments in the business. That's the sort of creative side of the business. And Matt and I are always like, oh my word, this is going to be so incredible. Like if we had received this would be so special. And then it doesn't hit the same way that we expected it to. And we have to go back and reevaluate, like, do people value this in this culture or in this sort of the same way that we do? And so it's just been a fun learning opportunity for us about how different people work.
I mean, I think what's quite interesting in this, I mean, you've intentionally built a business in a country with a different culture and everything to what you're used to. So all those assumptions that you have about how you grew up and how people react in that, you've had to take a step back from that. You've truly had to listen to your customers, listen to what they're saying, exercise empathy, think about what they're really saying. So in some ways, that's probably, I would imagine, helped you to kind of sharpen the sword, so to speak, in terms of your offering, as opposed to just coming in there with a whole layer of assumptions. And it's wonderful to hear that, because I think, as you say, you create sticky relationships. You create relationships where you've listened more than you've preached, so to speak, to your clients. And when you have that trusting relationship, I think it sets a nice bedrock for for a long and sustainable business. Um, so we got a few more minutes left, and I'd like to just chat about what your advice for other aspiring entrepreneurs might be. So when people talk about entrepreneurs, they don't always think of accountants building a advice business. Okay. They think, should I say it, Elon Musk, or they think Bill Gates, or they think Steve Jobs. Those are like cool industries. But I mean, as, let's call it, more pragmatic, analytical, thoughtful people. Matt B. Okay, I know you still want to be a lead guitarist for Live or whoever, but those dreams are long gone. But what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? One piece of advice for somebody who wants to embark on this kind of journey.
I'll go first, and then I'll maybe let Matt share his side. The one thing that I would encourage people who are interested in the entrepreneurship journey is to not underestimate the relationships you're building in your current role or whatever you're doing. A lot of people have spoken to us, and we haven't had the sort of traditional way of entrepreneurship where there has been a lot of challenge to bring client acquisition. But looking back at it, the hours that we put in building relationships prior to moving across is where all the value was lying. And people may say that's you've been so lucky, and sometimes you feel, was I lucky? Like, is this just, or is it actually you put in a lot of hard work to build meaningful relationships with people, and this is the fruit of those relationships. So my encouragement is build trusted, impactful relationships where you're just willing to give to people, with no strings attached, but be open to building those in an intentional way and to feed into the lives of the people around you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such good advice. At the end of the day, people do business with people, and they do business with people that they like and trust. I mean, I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche. So building on those relationships throughout, that's where the opportunity comes eventually. As I say, Kate came to you and said, "Hey guys, you want to do something with us?" Without that relationship in place, Worttth may never have been born. So. Matt Smith, I mean, do you want to add to that? I mean, from your side, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Matt. And that's not to say that we expect anything in return from the relationships that we're building, but just be mindful that you're building with purpose, that you're feeding into other people. And I think Matt and I didn't realize that, building a relationship with you, Graham, would result in us journeying together the way we've journeyed over the last few years, and similarly with Kate. So that's been really epic. I think my advice would be partnerships, and that kind of ties into that thought process. Is I've been so thankful that I've known Matt for a long time, both in personally and in my work journey. And I'm so thankful that I get to be in partnership with him. I would never want to do this alone. And I don't really view entrepreneurship in my eyes as something that I'd want to pursue alone. I find it to be quite a daunting and sometimes scary place. And it's so epic having someone in your corner that you can bounce ideas off, that can reassure you, that can encourage you, that can, hold you back if they need to hold you back. And so I would definitely say that's tough, because a lot of people, it contradicts glory in that you don't get all the glory for yourself, which is if we look at some of the bigger businesses around the world, we don't really see a partnership. It's typically one person going after that. So yeah, my advice to professionals is partnership. Surround yourself with the people that you want to surround yourself with.
And I guess living across different time zones, when you're lying awake at 2 a.m. in the morning, Matt Smith, thinking about how you're going to make payroll the next day, at least you can send a WhatsApp to Matt B and he's wide awake.
Exactly.
So there's a better way than that.
And we believe that shared pain is half the pain, and shared joy is double the joy. So we are living in that freedom.
So guys, I'm gonna leave with one last question, and we haven't really touched on it. I think it's come through in sort of your words and the way you've been speaking, but I want to leave you each with a personal reflection and maybe talking to your purpose. We've kind of flipped it around. Often we start these interviews is like, why? But I want to leave you with an opportunity just to kind of maybe share your sort of bigger purpose, both personally and from a Worttth perspective. You've achieved a lot up until now. But in terms of that future purpose, if you can each just share a few words around what that is, and how any of the listeners listening into the show can actually contribute to that purpose.
I don't mind going first. I can think.
I leave the tough question to last. That was a curveball.
Usually when we do these podcasts, at these moments when the tough question comes, I go, Matt, what do you think? And I let the smart one answer first. So I think it's my turn to take the bounce here. When I think about my personal purpose, it's a lot about energizing and inspiring others to reach their full potential. And I do that. I believe the gift is connection. And I have this phrase that sort of lives true, is creating magical human moments. I believe that we're here to feel deeply and to really impact the world and those around us. So I'm trying to live that out every day, in the way that we do business and the way that we do life. And I think that's so incredible when you've got a partner like Matt who is supportive of that. He shares in those values. And so, ultimately, we're trying to bring a little bit of color to finance. And where's that color lying? It's in the relationships that we build. It's kind of counterintuitive, maybe for some people. Like, is it very scalable? Probably not. But do we think about the ripple effect that we can have on people? Yes, and we believe that is scalable. And so that is what we're trying to achieve, or at least I'm trying from my personal. How people can encourage me to do that is, hold me accountable to seeing that point of view. And that there's anyone who's immigrated or moved, there's some tough times. You never really know until you've done it. And so I think there's that element, as well as just always having this motion or notion of giving rather than looking to receive. Like, how can we just feed into other people and inspire them? And when I say inspire, I think of breathe life. Let's breathe life into people.
Fantastic, Matt B. And Matt S has had a bit of time to think about that. So we'll leave it to you to close off with that final pearl of wisdom, Matt.
Yeah, I think, my purpose isn't too dissimilar from Matt, and that's actually been pretty critical in starting to journey together. I think it's allowed us to have a shared vision, shared path, hold each other steadfast in our decision making, and there's not a lot of tension in our decision making because we share that common purpose. And so, yeah, for me, I think it would be, having impact, but more than that, it would be the knock-on of that impact. It wouldn't be that impact is only received. It's that impact would then create or inspire those people to impact others. I think if we're only focused on the impact that Matt Smith or Matt Budden's going to have, it's only going to go one step. I think we want to instill ideas and thoughts with people that would encourage and inspire them to go and instill those thoughts and ideas in others, so that it sort of transcends one individual and rather starts a movement. Yeah, so I would say I'm super lucky and thankful that I have a partner that is so aligned in purpose and thought, because that just makes living out my purpose so much easier, and also at the same time, Matt is able to encourage me and hold me accountable in the same way that I'm able to do for him.
Guys, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. I think I'm also technically an accountant by training. So for three accountants, I don't think we really spoke numbers once in the show. And, to both of you, thanks for just being real about your journey. I hope that today's conversation is an inspiration for anybody who's listened to this. If you've taken even one nugget of wisdom out of this, please like and share this podcast. And I think, just to kind of leverage of what you said, purpose starts with impacting one person. And as Stephen Covey said, like, how do you expand that circle of influence? So guys, thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for sharing. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast again at some point in the future. So thanks for being here, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks so much, Graham.
Thanks, Graham.